Hi, my name is Katlaho Mapai, co-founder and CEO of Yoco. Today I had the privilege of being joined by my fellow co-founders, Carl Wazen, our Chief Business Officer, Bradley Watrous, our Chief Financial Officer, and Lungisa Machoba, our Chief Technology Officer. It was a privilege to spend time with my fellow co-founders, discussing our journey, the ethos of the organization, where we're trying to go and what we believe in. I hope you enjoy it too, and you're going to be a fly on the wall on conversations that we've been having for many years. Enjoy. Guys, how's it? First of all, whenever we get together, spend time, we always shake. Brad. Virtually, how you doing? Geez, like we've been working together for 8 years now. I was just reflecting on that today. It's amazing for me that every single conversation still feels like the first time, and I'm just as excited. And today's just another opportunity for that, which is really cool. But I think it's worth getting into something that most people don't know about the company, and that is the fact that the four of us actually came together before the idea. Our paths connected on many different levels, and I just wanted to chat a little bit about that first. So you and I met when we were kids in the early 90s. We went to the same aftercare. And we randomly ran into each other again many years later at university, lining up for business science. Can you think about sort of your life leading up to that moment and what came next in terms of your career?
Yeah. So, from playing with computers to, at high school, still having a passion for that, with a mixture of a bit of art at the same time. And then at the end of high school, I was actually keen to just start a little e-commerce thing, which my parents sort of very quickly shut down. And that's pretty much how I ended up in that line with you for business science.
And then you started a company towards the end of university, yeah?
Yeah. So I think right before the end of varsity, I started working with a couple of friends on creating a voice over IP app. So very similar to like WhatsApp voice, but on 3G networks and Symbian phones and Windows Mobile. So I think before the technology caught up. And yeah, that ended up becoming a business. A business that's primary premise was giving away phone calls for free. So, definitely wasn't applying the business side of the business degree. But nonetheless, like eventually that grew into a company, got acqui-hired and became part of a bigger company that was focused on voice over IP and SMS messaging.
And yeah, man, really cool to be sitting here with you. And then, Carl, so you and I met at an interesting time. I had finished at UCT, took up my first job at this consulting company and, developed a passion for telecoms. And the moment I walked into the space, I was like, this is exactly where I wanted to be. And, fast forward 12 months later, you and I are thrown together on a project. What built up to that moment in your life, and what are some of the things that came next?
Yeah, so unlike Lungi, I wasn't a born technologist, and I also wasn't I would say entrepreneurship was not in my DNA the way people sometimes talk about having started their business at 6-7 years old, selling lemonade to the neighbors. That wasn't really my story, but the culture of entrepreneurship was pretty pervasive in my family, and also in my community. So I'm originally Lebanese, and Lebanese people have been entrepreneurial for thousands of years, but it hasn't actually slowed down in any way. A lot of it is not by choice, really, it kind of forced to, but it was just a lot of real inspiration and expectation, right, from the family, because 3 generations of entrepreneurs, at least that I'm aware of. And my parents both started their businesses. They succeeded and failed, and just seeing a lot of the ups and downs, but just the beauty of the ups, and that made it all so powerful for me, and made it super clear that that's what I wanted to do at some point. So it was never an if, it was more a when. And the question of when was never about what's the idea or how big's the problem, although those are very important. It was very much about with whom, because I always knew that there's no way I could embark on such a journey unless, like, by myself. Like, that was never a thing. I had to do it with friends, and when we worked together, I'm like, okay, cool. So he's a guy that we're working really well together, but we're also share so many common interests and similar kind of perspectives on life. So it kind of felt like this might be the right partnership and the right time for us to jump off the cliff, as they say.
Yeah, geez, it's amazing like hearing you talk about that, because I never saw myself as an entrepreneur, and you know, I didn't come from a family of entrepreneurs. Parents are academics, pretty straight-laced, and it was very much on I would say a linear career path, pretty set. This started feeling like the only way to spend our time working on what really matters to us. So
Became a bit anti-establishment, like during our friendship, and it was kind of like felt like rebels that we had to do this entrepreneurship thing. It wasn't weren't gonna change anything otherwise. Yeah, that's how it felt.
And then this third guy, Bradley, like complete comet in my life. Was not expecting to meet Bradley, and we got, similar to me and you, Carl, like thrust onto a team together and told to figure things out. And Brad, just curious, like, what was life for you leading up to that moment?
Yeah, I grew up in Johannesburg, and parents in the technology space. So my mom was a software engineer, which is very unusual for at least her time, and my dad's also in IT. So I've kind of been the black sheep of the family that went into finance, but learned a lot about computers from an early age as well, and I guess that got me really interested in it. And they also had this drive for entrepreneurship. I was one of those who was selling Coca-Colas around the corner from the tuck shop at primary school, and running always little side businesses. But it was really, I think, my father who encouraged that. He had this thing where he wouldn't give us pocket money; he'd give us capital, and we had to figure out a way to turn it into profit. So that was always in the back of my mind. But went to university and studied in Johannesburg, and then was expecting, I guess, in my 30s to get into entrepreneurship. But when this opportunity at Rocket Internet came about, I felt like it was just an early ticket. And I literally called my brother. I'm like, listen, I've got this offer. I don't know if I should do it. He's like, just take it. And I think a week later, I was on a plane to Cape Town. Within 3 weeks, I think we were on a plane to Nigeria. So really just put me on a completely different track, I guess, coming from middle class, sort of Johannesburg life, straight into Lagos in Nigeria. Was a real baptism of fire into entrepreneurship, I'd say. And learned a lot, and I guess that's where we became really good friends. I guess just being in those, living, sort of in the back of the office, and kind of just trying to figure out things from the ground up was incredible.
Yeah, I'll never forget those days, man. They just, in my opinion, mentally prepared us for everything ahead and made everything else possible, right? I think, setting up a e-commerce venture in Lagos in 2012 and just seeing that scale and become what it was in such a short space of time, I think redefined what is possible in our minds, right? And I'll never forget the day you and I decided that it was time to go back to South Africa and start a company, right? And when we took Hendrik outside, our boss, for a coffee and told him that we were leaving, he was like, what are you guys talking about?
Thanks for not leaving me hanging. I mean, I was waiting for you in Cape Town. Like one of these guys coming back from Lagos. Looks like they're having too much fun, but luckily they did come back.
Well, that was the thing, right? Not only did I come back, but I came back with new gifts.
No, you came back with our CFO.
With our CFO, exactly. We were all in Cape Town. You were out of your previous company. You had come from Lebanon after doing a bit of sabbatical. Brad and I were back from Nigeria, a little bit burnt out from the experience, but excited about the future. And then we just started hanging out.
Even outside of, the really big idea that ended up becoming Yoco, it was really a chemistry amongst people. And that, I think, is the essence of great companies. It's that you want to have people who just enjoy hanging out and can just have hours-long conversations about random things that are not necessarily related to the only topic you guys came in together. So I think the friendship is the cornerstone, I think, of this. And just laughing and having fun. I mean, that was what it was about.
And then I guess we were looking at lots of different ideas, really different, right? Like different stratas and stuff. And we started circling in on this mobile point of sale business model. And do you remember like when we started realizing how significant this was as an idea, like when we started looking at the numbers? Can you remember like just some of the things we started seeing?
What we noticed when we started to look at the numbers was just the size of the problem. So what we noticed was that small businesses and micro businesses, which are 99% of businesses in South Africa and actually in most countries, were completely kept out of the payments market. So there were over 80% of people in South Africa had cards and bank accounts, but fewer than 10% of businesses in South Africa had cards. So they had card machines, sorry. They had bank accounts, but they didn't have a way to accept cards, which was a critical part of their business. And with more people having cards, not having a card machine meant missing sales. And we tried to dig into what was actually causing, businesses not wanting, and there was lots of theories. Was it tax, or was it wanting to be under the radar? And we noticed it was just impossible for a small to micro business to get a card machine. Yeah. Impossible. Like it was almost like getting a mortgage for your house. Like it was horrible. Yeah. So that problem felt huge, but required a certain combination of things to fix. And that just felt like the right challenge for us, because it was, at the time, a $50 billion a year transaction value gap, which we now have revised that estimate up to 100 billion. Because if you think about it, that is the whole consumer consumption, right? Consumption, payments is consumption. And if all consumption is still happening in cash, that means a lot of businesses are actually missing out.
A lot of the things we were talking about, even before we got to this idea, was just observing society, right? And what we refer to as the status quo, and this idea that some people could participate and some people couldn't, and some people could come in and some people couldn't, and just realizing as we looked across the South African economy that this was how things were, and that in many respects people were just being artificially left out. So from a purpose perspective, this was like the energy that was pulling us together, right? And almost being like the filter through which we wanted to pursue the big idea and what we wanted to solve. And I guess what I find fascinating is that the intuition that pulled us towards small business, and then realizing how significant the problem was, and then at the same time realizing and solving the problem that we would be helping economies at a localized scale, and driving employment and giving tools and all these things. That was just fascinating for me how we got there.
Yeah, I guess I think for me one of the early memories or the early triggers for me that made me realize that we are definitely going in the right direction was just visiting businesses and hearing the stories of waiting. This idea that I want this thing, I've asked for it, I've been with this company for so many years, I've had a relationship, but I'm not allowed to get it. Right. And my customers want to be able to take that type of payment. So I think that was basically for me what really started to say, okay, this is a big problem, because I think at the start you always assume, okay, look, it's definitely affecting a lot of businesses, but the sense of desperation that businesses have towards it, that wasn't clear to me. It was look, I guess people have maybe just given up on wanting card. They've just accepted that they can't get it. Happy with cash at this stage. These are all the assumptions driving it, because surely you assume that if everybody wanted it that bad, they'd be knocking at the bank's door and really and it turns out they were. And I guess that's sort of that's obviously very interesting. Yeah. And then from there, just starting to understand that there were a lot of reasons that were making it impossible for these kinds of customers to get in. And we could solve for those reasons, because the way we were going about the solution, the technology, the vetting processes, everything was just different. And that for me became clear. And then, of course, from there, you start to do more research and you start to talk to the early customers, because now you're trying to sign people up at the early stage. And the people you talk to, like in the first phase of stuff, later on when you come back, 3, 4, 6 months later, they still don't have a solution. And that was like just for me, okay, we need to move fast. This thing is like a real problem in the market.
So this all takes me to 2013. You and I had moved to Johannesburg, Brad too, and we had to convince a bank to share their acquiring license with us so that we could process payments through them. We realized early on that we needed to set ourselves up in a very particular type of way so that we had a direct relationship with our merchants. And Brad, I just thought it'd be cool to just chat a little bit about that.
I guess the timing was also really good because this was, I think, Square in the US launched in 2010, and they were one of the first players to do mobile point of sale. And this was 2 years or 3 years later when MasterCard and Visa just released the first frameworks for what's called a merchant aggregator, or a payment facilitator. So it's a player like Yoco who's able to aggregate a whole lot of smaller merchants under their own, you could say, super merchant account, and in that way, take care of all the end-to-end, management of those customers, and have a single interaction with the bank. So the timing was really good. Those frameworks came out, and we then wanted to be the first, player to get this license. And I think the banks told us there were 13 to 15 other teams in the country trying to get one. And yeah, it was very competitive, I guess. And we came together and spent a lot of time. I remember quite sort of like academic there in the bottom end of Braamfontein, like, little office, like coming up with ideas and trying to put our best foot forward, bearing in mind we were all under 30 with no banking experience, trying to convince a bank to take a bet on us. But yeah, we put together that big, I think it was, I don't know, nearly 100 pages or something. It's this sort of big manual of documentation. It sort of was an offer the bank couldn't refuse. And I think when they took a look at that, they realized these guys are serious about this, which put us on a front foot. But yeah, that was very important that we could, and I guess they also said to us, the fact that we hadn't come out of the traditional industry was what differentiated us, because they were comfortable that we'd approach this in a fresh way, and we'd have the best shot of making it as simple as possible for the merchant to sign up and get a card machine.
It literally took us a year to get a license, and we also had to fundraise to get that license. Yeah, okay. So it was a weird chicken and egg situation. We needed the license to fundraise, and we needed to fundraise to get the license. There was a crazy situation we found ourselves in. And can you remember how we dealt with that and managed to get some folks to back our idea?
Back us? Yo, look, that was by far the hardest year of my life. Up to that point, there's been harder since. I know. But that was a very tough year, and I remember it because there was contrary to a lot of the lean startup type of businesses, people could just throw something at a customer, get feedback, and iterate quickly, and then within a few months they're growing. We were waiting. That was our year. So in that time, yes, we could speak to customers, yes, but if the bank thing didn't happen, there was no business. So it was so binary, and that made it just very stressful. But I think we learned, we built up a lot of resilience in that year. But yeah, when it came to fundraising, we obviously needed to pay ourselves. We needed to hire a few people. What we didn't realize until we actually got the bank to tell us what they needed from us was that we needed, not corporate backers, but some kind of institutional backing. So we have a good group of people willing to back us, but let's actually start speaking to institutions. And this was 2013, and things were very different back then, right? Very different. Most people we spoke to, and we spoke to probably 50 to 100 institutions in South Africa. Yeah. And quite a few outside South Africa, and most of them said, the banks are going to crush you. No way, right? Where's your CTO. I mean, like, sorry, where's your? I remember there was a question like, where's your CA?
Yeah,
that was a funny one.
I remember that question. Who's your CA?
Who's your CA? And we're like, no, we have an actuary. No, where's your CA? But anyway, it was just a funny time where we literally understood the investment landscape in South Africa, and it wasn't very promising for an early stage company. We managed to get 2 entities close to giving us, a term sheet, and they were very keen, but at some point they both pulled out.
And that was just after we got the license, or the provisional, remember?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we got the license, which was awesome. And having those, there's those institutional investors interested helped us get that license. Absolutely. Just after we got the license, people they just pulled out. Like one pulled out and the other pulled out afterwards. So we were left with a license, which was like the real prized asset, but without an institutional backer, and we were tapped out of institutional energy to raise more funding. But we had all those angels, and I remember one day you were like, because that felt impossible, right? Because we had to go back to the bank and say, look, our institutions are gone, and they were going to snatch our license away. So that was the feeling, right? But at some point you take a step back and you're like, that's not why they picked us, right? They picked us because we are the right team. And then I remember you were like, it was over like after dinner, we were renting a place here in Cape Town, and then you're like, I think we should just close this round with angels. And I'm like, most of those angels will probably pull out if the institutions are gone, and the bank will be like, let's just try. Maybe they won't. Yeah. And none of them pulled out, not one. In fact, we were able to raise more from them than we had previously without a lead, and this is now what's called a party round. And at the time, those were very rare. Yeah. But I think people understood that
we were never going to stop.
Correct. They felt like something was burning on the inside. They also appreciated that we were not going to draw down on a single dime before we got the license, right?
No, I mean, looking back, that was the biggest blessing to happen to the organization in disguise. And I guess, so got our license now, got our first seed round, we moved back down to Cape Town, and now we actually get started on building the company, right?
We were already pretty tired by then.
Yeah, exactly. And then, my friend, it was your turn, huh? You were up
Time
to
to
start
build.
batting. Time to start building. What was that like in 2014?
Yeah, so I mean, I think in many ways it's probably the most exciting part of a venture, in that you're now at the point where you've cleared that first hurdle, and all that's left is the stuff that's within your control as a company. And I think, I mean, we got very lucky in that we'd sort of prepped a little bit of stuff before that point. I'd sort of been spending some time, with an old friend of mine, Andrew, from a previous venture, and we sort of had this gentleman's agreement that if everything got sorted out, licenses, etc., he would join the venture and actually join as a first employee, and we'd start building everything. Yeah. So that happened, and I kind of went back to him and said, well, we've got the license, we've got the funding, and we started really building up and coding everything. Working with our various partners. I even spent some days at the bank doing stuff from the bank and integrating and building out the original system. And I still remember probably one of the best moments where we were sitting coding in the back of the room, and we got to that point where we're actually ready to do our first transaction. And everything's set up, everything's working, but we thought, this will never work. So we just sat there quietly in the back and did the transaction, and ta-da, Yoco's first transaction happened, and only the two of us were aware, so we had to redo the whole thing and sort of recreate the experience of having done the first transaction. But I think those were really, really exciting days, and just getting to the point where it's ready to go live. Yeah.
Wow, I was in the room that day, and I remember looking at you at the corner of my eye and seeing you do this. We did our first transaction. Earlier on that year, we had this logo that we've been using in our pitch decks, and you came to us and said, guys, we can't use this logo. It's got too many colors, and it's making it impossible to build anything around it. And we got super emotional, remember, about not wanting to let go of the logo. But you kept on pushing it on, and then eventually I kind of figured out what you were saying, that we got to go single color, and it's going to give us a lot of flexibility. But the most interesting thing that came out of that was we realized that we needed to do a branding exercise, right? So before any logo or anything, we needed to come together and really figure out like what we stood for and what we were about. And this was long before the first transaction or anything like that. It was quite bizarre for a startup to be thinking about these types of things. But yeah, that started the journey of us building our brand. If you imagine 2013, we're getting a license. 2014, we're building the product. It was 2015 where we actually started running as a company for the first time.
First operation year.
It was exactly, and like that was such a energy, cultural, it was such a shift that we weren't mentally prepared for. And also for us, the company had been going for 2 years. To the outside world, the company had just started, yeah?
It was also, I guess, a year where we started to think a bit longer term because we'd, had spent so much time just trying to get to this point, as you say, 2 years of really just getting to a point where we could actually process a transaction. And then I guess we got there and we realized, well, what now? We're actually getting going, but we don't have all of these things in place. I guess that's where the brand came in and we started to work that through. But we also started, I guess, to try to figure out this model, like how does this business actually work? And in that, we learned a lot of lessons. It was, sometimes going after larger businesses, sometimes going after smaller ones, getting this sort of very eclectic combination of merchants from sort of a lollipop store through to a trendy Bree Street restaurant. It was like pretty much everything. And I think in that process, we also started to learn like figure out what is the type of customer that we want to focus on. And I remember we kind of got to the end of that year having launched the company and around 500 merchants and got to the real realization that if we wanted to scale this, 500 wasn't going to cut it. This is something that needed to grow significantly. And I guess in that process, we got into this model of like, what does it take to scale up this business? And, you're signing up what is a relatively small merchant who's doing, relatively small transactions on an infrequent basis. And we've got to put a lot of effort in to actually get that terminal to that merchant and get them aware of it and take them through the process to actually decide to buy it and then actually get it. So we were investing a lot of front in that process of marketing and selling that terminal. But how were we going to make sure we were recovering those funds and building a profitable business? And I think it was, I remember 2016, it was experiment after experiment, test after test, trying to figure out like how can we really unlock this growth formula. We got to 5,000 merchants at the end of 2016, so like a 10x growth in a year. All at profitable economics. We're paying back those merchants in 6 to 9 months. So it really proved the model and gave us a lot of confidence then to start fundraising and thinking about the future.
Right, so we were dabbling with different types of merchants. We started getting attracted to larger merchants because they were more predictable, they were easier to reach, and they gave us a sense of safety. But we could all feel that something was wrong, right? That we were moving away from our mission and what we set out to do. Like we felt it. We felt it as we came into the office. Yeah, we just decided that no, like we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to make market. We're going to figure it out with the smaller merchants. We're going to innovate. And yeah, we did the launch at the end of 2015, started 2016, just trying to figure all of these things out. And I'll never forget the feeling at the end of 2016 when we got to the 5,000, we grew 10 times and we kind of were able to look at each other and know that we were proving this model alongside creating access and that these things were not contradicting each other, but they were actually reinforcing each other. That was a fundamental change. From a product development perspective, I mean, single product company, becoming multi-product, like, how do we think about building products as an organization?
Yeah, like it's a very good question. I mean, I think obviously every product starts with a problem. So that's really, products exist to solve a problem that a customer has. Obviously with our first product, it was a very, very clear and simple problem. But I think at the end of the day, even though you're trying to solve a problem, what you got to layer on top of that is for your company to succeed once solving the problem, it's also just how do you build a product that beyond solving a problem makes someone feel a specific way when using it in relation to the problem that you're solving. And I think this has always been something that's been really important in the product space at Yoco, is just delivering a product that our customers will feel a specific way about. We captured it in the word delight in the early days. I think we've moved quite a bit beyond that and really started to distill what do we mean by that. But there was always this equivalency between our brand and our product. But then the ultimate crux of it was just making sure we're solving problems. So I think at the end of, in the first phase of before we raised our Series A round, the problems were really just focused on the very fundamental basics of credit card payments. I think thereafter we started to encounter other merchant problems. And a lot of this started to come from the existing customers we have. So, customers were having problems with their point of sale solutions. They weren't finding an easy way to add products, etc. The next problem we started to look at was capital. Customers were having a struggle getting access to capital. So I think these are some of the problems that we started to tackle at that point and really starting to expand our product base from there. I think what's interesting though is that over time we started to cover all these other problems, but what we then realized was asking ourselves the question of, yes, we're doing payments and we're good at payments, but are we good enough? Are we actually creating the emotion that we wanted to create in our product when we thought about it? And I think what we found is that, sure, we're good at payments, but we could be so much better. And I think in many ways, like our product space fanned out a little bit and then fanned right back in, and we said we can be so much better at payments. And actually we refocused and recentered as a company back to payments, on top of having the other products as well. And I think there we started to go much deeper and say, well, what can we do to really delight customers? And I think from there it was, adding card machines and, building everything from scratch internally and really getting to the point where we solved customer needs in unique Yoco ways. So I think that really was, but end of the day, it's always been really about making our customers feel a specific way in relation to the products that we offer them to solve their jobs, the things that they need to do.
Amazing hearing about how we think about products, and you touched on something very important, and it was a journey for us, right? Journey towards our core, which is payments. We started there, we released all these other things, and we've kind of come back there in a deep way. And I guess, Brad, from your side, you understand the payment space better than any of us, right? You're our guru. And I guess maybe just worth talking about how a payment works, the exchange, and why we're making these massive investments into going deeper and improving that exchange.
Yeah, sure. I think something that we also had to figure out was that there's probably can be up to 5 or 6 people involved in every single institutions involved in every single transaction that takes place. So, when you're there at the terminal and you're just tapping your card, and you get a couple of seconds later you get this approval, that's actually probably bounced around the world a few times. It's gone through a few different payment processes. It's gone to the bank. It's gone to Visa and MasterCard. It's gone back to another bank. And then it's gone through to your account and then all the way back again. So there's a lot happening behind the scenes to get that approval. And obviously we want to make it so simple and easy at the point of sale that when you're there exchanging goods and services, this payment just disappears into the background and it's not this awkward event. So that needs to be fast, and we need to get that approval. As just about every time. And as we got into it, we realized every time that there's a layer in between the buyer and the seller, there's room for failure. There's something can go wrong, and it's whether it's at the technical level on the processing, or afterwards from a recon and settlement perspective. This end-to-end process, every step in the chain adds some risk. So it's really what makes a great payments company is one that's just reliable and that you can trust to get your payment approved.
I remember I think it was like Q2 2018, we'd shown moderate growth from the previous period, and we're like, okay, we need to do something here. And similar to the branding exercise, we pulled ourselves out of the room, locked ourselves up, and started defining and articulating our vision and our purpose and our core values.
If you think about like the economy and the concentration of wealth, especially in a country like South Africa, that's a complete sign of commerce being closed, where there's certain gatekeepers or certain people who are able to deliver commerce, and ultimately all wealth concentrates around those people. When we look at Yoco as a business, what we're really trying to do is get to a point where anyone can engage in commerce, regardless of who they are, where they come from. And I think this really is where this idea of opening up commerce came from. Regardless of what type of business you want to start, what type of organization you're part of, you should be able to get involved in the space and to do commerce. And I think in many ways this captured what it was that got the business started. We were unlocking commerce for a group of people, but now it became something that we felt we could continue in perpetuity around it, to say, if this company continues to open commerce, then it's staying on the right track. So at least for me, it was really about this idea of like really just creating an open environment so that anyone can engage in business.
Maybe just one the point here. We chose the word commerce because we believe that commerce came before everything, right? It came before financial services, before banking, and it will continue way after banking, way after financial services. It's about commerce. It's about the exchange. It's about people trading, and that's what we're about, right? We believe the vision needs to just be very, very long term, and ultimately we think commerce is fundamentally what is going to uplift society. So we're very driven by that.
What I also love is that it's all well and good saying it, but it reflects in our model, right? So we charge a transaction fee. There's no monthly fee. There's no contracts. There's no rentals. You only pay when you use. And as such, we are bound to the success of our merchants. We only grow when they grow, yeah? And this keeps us supremely honest. We obviously tested during COVID, like no other time. During the test, it was just sort of this harrowing realization that like, if our merchants are not transacting, like this is a reflection of what's going on in the economy. We have to do something about it. We have to be there. We have to be present. And I'll just never forget that time. I've never felt more connected to our customers than in that moment.
Yeah, it was a heavy feeling. Yeah.
But we all came through together.
No, I think that we were decisive, and we backed ourselves, but we had a ton of support from our merchants. Like, there wasn't this kind of pressure, like, you need to reduce our fees, or you need to do this for us, or give us money. Like, it was not like that. It was like, we want you guys to succeed because you guys are critical for our success during the pandemic and post. And it's just an amazing like manifestation of the relationship. Yeah. Absolutely. We've never felt more responsible than during this period.
And this actually links very nicely to our purpose.
Yeah.
So enabling people to thrive. I always say this purpose actually preceded the business model and the founding of the company. It's what connected us as a team, what we want to do. We just want people to do well. That's all. Like we want to share in the abundance, right? And move forward together. And yeah, Brad, just curious, like, what are some of your sentiments around this?
Yeah, I mean, as Cole was speaking, I was also just thinking it's sort of this long-term orientation as well, and just realizing, while we'll all go through difficult moments and things will be challenging, we're all in it together. There's the skin in the game, and I think that's, as you say, built into the way that we want to do business as well. It's not about taking and leaving; it's about investing together in the future and building something much bigger than either one of us, any one of us. And it's really cool to see now the sort of catalytic effect of what Yoco is doing in terms of getting other people to see small businesses differently and in a way validate this market that's been ignored and hidden for so long. So that helps us to build a successful business and this ecosystem that we're really a part of.
Guys, it's been such a pleasure spending time. I think just one more thing I want to get into. And I'm actually going to ask you, Lungi, because it's interesting. We have interesting dynamic between the four of us, right? We have different strengths. You and Carl are very much forward-looking. Brad and I are very anchoring, and yeah, I just love hearing from you guys around how you see the future and what most excites you about where we're going as an organization.
Yeah, so it's an interesting question because it depends how far in the future we want to look. But I do think that at the end of the day, if we see ourselves as a company that's about enabling people to thrive through open commerce, that means we fundamentally are a participant in the exchange. And I just see us starting to play a deeper and deeper role on multiple sides of the exchanges. So I think end of the day, today, with the way we see payments, it's a business owner and a customer walks in and the business owner is accepting the payment from the customer. But in truth, when you really look at it, a payment is happening at multiple angles in that situation. Yeah. The business owner is receiving a payment, but the customer is making the payment. Yeah. And what the customer is using to make the payment is ultimately some kind of an account that he uses to receive a payment from somewhere else, whether it's the company that he works at or it's a venture he's running or anything. So really the economy is built up of a set of payments coming from multiple players. And if we really want to open commerce and get it to be really simple, we need to start playing in the various different pieces of payments so that we can actually start to innovate. Payments today is hard. Having exchanges is really, really hard. And I think at the end of the day, if we want to be a true player in this and we want to be able to innovate, we need to play in multiple facets of the space. So for me, where I see us going is really starting to engage across all the different facets of payments. But yeah, I guess it's all about how far we're looking outwards.
No, I think we articulated this in a nice term, right? This idea that we're building a financial platform for modern commerce. I mean, that's literally what you just described right now. Yeah. Awesome. Carl, anything else in the future that gets you excited?
Well, yeah. I mean, I want us to have 1 million merchants. That's kind of on the low side.
Yeah.
And I think this is feasible, right? Like South Africa alone has an estimated 6 million businesses out there. Most of those businesses, the government doesn't even know they exist. They're unseen, and they need us. And not trying to come at this from a very benevolent standpoint. We need them to survive. We need them for our society to thrive. They're absolutely critical. We need to grow the small business economy. So we need to touch as many of them as we can. And we'll take, I think, a lot of partners with us as we do it. And we'll learn a lot and innovate a lot. But I think it's the journey of a lifetime.
I think picking up from that and something that's deeply personal for me, my entrepreneurial journey was I just wanted to work with people I love and respect, right? That became a core driver, and entrepreneurship was or is just a vehicle to do that, right? And I often reflect on the stars that needed to align for the four of us to come together. It's quite crazy when you think about it, our backgrounds, the diversity, and just the magic in that. And I guess, we're going to build this financial platform for modern commerce. We're going to get to the 1 million merchants. We're going to collaborate. But to be honest, what excites me the most is this idea that we're going to redefine how you build a company and how people can be inside an organization, and that they can be themselves. And that within that, there's magic, and we can just reset things in a country, in a continent that needs a reset, let's be honest, right? So that's what drives me, and super proud to be doing it with you guys and the incredible people that we get to work with, and our customers that we also consider to be our friends and our peers as entrepreneurs. It's all just a gift, and thank you so much for the time today.
Yeah. Thank you. It's absolutely all about the people, right? That's what That's what people at Yoco feel. It's like it's always about the people behind the business, and that makes it, I guess, quite unique. So it's a privilege.
Awesome, guys. Cheers, dude.
Cool. Okay.
Cheers, Brad.
Cheers, man. I'm so late.
Okay. Cheers.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much. Man. That was really cool. Thanks.
But yes, I could use the app. I won't lie.